Does equanimity equal passivity? Someone in comments asked this question. When there's equanimity, is there a kind of passivity where you don't care what happens? So I thought this was a good thing to unpack. It is somewhat paradoxical, but with equanimity, there's a knowing that's deeply instinctual that everything is completely okay. And what comes with that is this knowing that you don't have control over anything as an individual apart from everything, because that whole paradigm is flawed. So even though a thought could say that I have control over this or that, your instinct, your deep knowing without concept is very clear that there is no separate self. There's nothing acting apart from anything else, and thus pushing and pulling on your experience is essentially useless. And indeed, there is nothing that can actually do that. There is nothing that needs to or has to reject experience. So there's a deep peace that comes with this that's primary, that I would say is always there, or essentially always there. This is what I would call equanimity. Now, does it mean you don't care what happens? In one way of speaking, sure, I could say it doesn't matter what happens, because the only reason we think about what matters and what doesn't matter is because we believe we can use that to get what we think we want or need. But again, when you see that that's all a false paradigm, those thoughts aren't entertained. So you don't fantasize about what you want or what you don't want, because it doesn't matter. It's an afterthought. Rather, you engage what's already happening right in front of your face. You live in unequivocal presence. It's much, much harder to fool yourself that believing a thought about what you want or don't want can have any effect on anything at all. And at some point, those thoughts just subside. So the whole language around, do I care, do I not care? Is everything insignificant, or is everything infinitely significant? It's just language, just a bunch of words and concepts. But what's actually here, what's alive and real, what's present, clear, empty, full, is undeniable, immediate, obvious, engulfing, enjoyable, sublime, spontaneous. This is where you live. This is where everything lives. This is the only place that you could actually occupy. This little sliver of eternity that seems like a past pouring into a future. But when you disregard those thoughts, it's just this brilliant, mysterious aliveness. So as far as passivity, the word passivity, I wouldn't say that equanimity is passivity, because you have access to resources immediately when, say, something comes up, there's a crisis, something needs addressed. You don't feel like you need to avoid or back away from life. Rather, you engage it simply and directly and intelligently. So I would say it's kind of the opposite of passivity in a sense. However, you could also argue, or you could make the statement that a certain passivity starts to permeate your life, where you realize a lot of what you used to think you had to engage in didn't exist at all. You're reacting to thoughts. So there is a certain sense of becoming far more relaxed, passive. You could almost say disinterested, but I don't think that term's too accurate. There's a term called dispassion. All of these make sense from that standpoint, that you're no longer reacting to what doesn't even exist, to what doesn't matter. So perhaps the word is discernment. You have a discernment that's clear, that some things, meaning the things in your mind, the beliefs about what should and shouldn't be, there's quite a passivity in regard to those, to the point where they just start to subside. But when it comes to, let's call it the actual, what's actually occurring right now, the engagement with life, it's anything but passive. It's a willingness to fully participate, plunge into life, feel everything, respond intelligently, respond lovingly. So here's an example. Kimura, you've seen her in the videos. She's the puppy. She's about 2.5 years old. She actually got very sick yesterday, and she's in the doggy hospital, which is concerning, of course. And, she may need maybe even surgery. We don't really know yet. We're waiting for an ultrasound and so forth. But she got very sick very quickly. And of course that's concerning. Of course I felt the emotion of concern, and I felt even sadness for her and so forth. But at the same time, there's a profound equanimity. And interestingly, just looking at her, she was getting kind of lethargic, like maybe listless would be the word. She was very low energy, almost falling asleep, just sitting there, sick, couldn't keep water down. And looking into her eyes, she didn't look distressed at all. No distress, very present. But the body was almost shutting down, and she definitely needed help, needed fluids and support and so forth. So that whole process, we were able to respond immediately, simply, intelligently, without unnecessary drama, but certainly concern. We held her tight and give her kisses before she went back to go into the doggy hospital for the night to get her fluids and labs and antibiotics and all that. So the action was appropriate. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was passive at all. It was quite active and efficient even. But still through all of it, there's a thread of peace and equanimity, and things are deeply okay regardless of how anything goes. More importantly, there's a knowing that I can't control anything. Not based on what I would want. If I could entertain the thought that says, I just insist that it goes this way or that way, sure, it's a thought, but that's not going to change what's actually happening. And in fact, it can get in the way of your own judgment about how to actually deal with the eventualities as they unfold and change, and because everything's a dynamic environment. So without all those background thoughts that are just unnecessary and inaccurate, it's easier to see things more clearly, to make better judgment decisions, and be present for your loved ones, for the dog, for Kimura. So that's just an example where there can be even intense emotion, there can be an intense situation and a lot of activity, and there's still equanimity. So equanimity is something that is sort of just threaded through all of experience. That's maybe the best way I can say it. And there is a deep knowing that everything's completely fine, actually, no matter how anything plays out. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have any other questions, let me know in comments about equanimity, how it plays into life situations and passivity and dispassion and all that. Also, please wish Kimura good luck.